The call came on a rainy Wednesday evening. Rachel Carter was sitting at her small kitchen table in her modest Boston apartment, laptop open, invoices stacked beside her, and a cup of chamomile tea steadily cooling untouched. The rain tapped insistently against the window pane, like a quiet reminder of everything left unsaid. Her phone lit up. Ethan. She hesitated. The name stirred 100 emotions: pride, fatigue, guilt, and something she didn't want to name yet, resentment. Hey, Rach. You got a second? Ethan's voice was bright, energetic, too energetic. Rachel pushed aside her exhaustion and tried to match his tone. Sure. What's up? I got in. Her breath caught. Into Harvard Med? Yup. Official email just came in. I did it, Rachel. I'm going to be a doctor. Rachel leaned back in her chair, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Ethan, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. He chuckled nervously. Yeah, so, listen, there's something else. Mom and Dad, they can't help much financially. You know how tight things are. She knew. Their parents lived paycheck to paycheck in a small Vermont town. Her dad's back problems had ended his career early, and her mom's hours at the diner had been reduced for months now. So Ethan hesitated. I was wondering if you could help. Just for now. Maybe just the first semester? I'll take loans after that. I promise. Rachel glanced around her apartment-owned bedroom, barely furnished, the kind of place she lived in when every dollar mattered. Her job at the accounting firm paid just enough to survive and stash a few hundred into savings each month. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Still. Ethan was her little brother. He was going to be a doctor. Of course, she said softly. I'll cover it. That was how it began. What Ethan promised would be one semester turned into 2, then 3, and then all 8. Tuition. Lab fees. Books. Housing. Even groceries during clinical rotations. Rachel paid for all of it. She worked double shifts during tax season. Skipped vacations. Declined promotions that required travel. Said no to dates and parties and nice things. Her couch had springs that creaked every time she sat down. Her winter coat had a rip she kept patching each year. But she never told Ethan. Never hinted at what she was giving up. Because he called her every few weeks, excited about surgery rotations and physiology classes, about saving lives. Because he ended every call with, I love you, Rach. I couldn't do this without you. Because Rachel believed this was what family did. Still, sometimes alone in her apartment after another lonely birthday or yet another passed-over promotion, she wondered. Would he do the same for me? Rachel Carter once believed that quiet sacrifices would eventually be seen, if not by the world, then at least by the one person she loved the most, her younger brother, Ethan. She had imagined the moment he would graduate in the deep crimson gown of Harvard, his eyes searching the crowd for her in the guest seats, full of gratitude. She would smile through tears, clap the loudest, and believe that every sleepless night scraping together tuition money, every holiday spent alone, every date she turned down had been worth it. She had believed. Until that afternoon. It was her mother Linda's 62nd birthday. Rachel had driven nearly 3 hours from Boston back to the small Vermont town. She brought a cheesecake tart, her mom's favorite, and a fresh bouquet of tulips. The house was filled with laughter, the smell of roast chicken, and the familiar twang of old country music drifting from her father's worn-out speaker. Rachel was never one for parties, but that day, her heart felt full. Until she walked past the kitchen to grab more ice. Ethan's voice drifted out, quiet but clear. He was talking to their parents, unaware that his sister stood just a few steps away, still holding an empty glass. Rachel's just making herself suffer, he was saying. She's smart, but she chooses this small life. A cramped little apartment, accounting for mid-tier firms. Not very ambitious. Rachel froze. She didn't understand. She should keep helping me, Ethan continued. She doesn't have a family, no kids, no big plans. I'm building something big. I deserve a good life. She's the one who settled for small. Rachel's heart pounded. Each word hit her like a blunt knife. Not sharp enough to scream but sharp enough to carve away, slowly, at the self-worth she had worked so hard to protect. She stepped back from the kitchen door without making a sound. The glass in her hand trembled slightly. Ethan didn't see her. No one did. She returned to the backyard, smiling at her cousin, joking with her aunt as if nothing had happened. But that smile was just a mask. That night, Rachel slept in her childhood bedroom. The same four walls still held her high school photos and a framed certificate of honors. But it no longer felt like home. It was the place she lay awake until 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, trying to process what she had heard. Ethan wasn't just ungrateful. He was contemptuous. No one had forced her to help him. But no one had stopped her, either. No one had ever asked, "Are you okay, Rachel?" No thank you. No heartfelt hug. Just easy I love yous over the phone and now, backhanded criticism behind her back. When Rachel returned to Boston, she didn't cry. Instead, she opened her laptop, logged into her bank and credit card accounts. In a matter of minutes, she removed every linked payment method connected to Ethan's name. She canceled the recurring transfers. She blocked the email from the bank Ethan used to request financial aid. Finally, she blocked her brother's number. No warning. No farewell email. No outburst. No tears. Just closure. A cut with no blood, but deep enough to reach bone. A wound no one could see, but one that turned a devoted sister into a woman who no longer waited for miracles from anyone. Rachel had never been comfortable with silence. All those years in Boston amid honking cars and hurried footsteps she had always been busy. Busy managing budgets, busy looking out for Ethan, busy carrying burdens no one asked her to carry, but no one stepped in to share either. When Ethan disappeared from her life, or rather, when she made the choice to erase him from every account, every data field, every bank connection, she thought she'd feel empty. But strangely, the emptiness wasn't hollow. It was a space to breathe. And then it was broken. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as she walked through the door after a long day at the office. Her coat was still on her shoulders when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A number she didn't recognize, but with a Boston area code. Not familiar. But not entirely foreign. She hesitated for a breath. Then picked up. "Hello?" A man's voice replied, cautious like someone used to delivering difficult news. "Ms. Carter? This is Dr. James Hallstrom, Associate Dean of Clinical Practice at Boston Medical College. I apologize for the unexpected call, but I need to verify some information regarding a student, Ethan Carter." Rachel tightened her grip on the phone. It had been 3 months since she last heard that name, but just 2 syllables were enough to make her chest clench. "Yes, I'm his sister." "Thank you," he said. "Ethan is currently facing a serious financial issue. According to our records, you're listed as his tuition sponsor. However, he's unable to continue his clinical rotation due to unpaid fees. We need to confirm whether there has been a change in your sponsorship commitment." Rachel bit her lip. Her chest felt like it had been packed with stone. Not because of the money, but because of the lie. Ethan had told them she would still pay. After everything. After all of it. After she had walked away for good. He was still using her name. Still clinging to her sacrifice like a habit woven into his blood. Rachel inhaled deeply, then answered, slowly and clearly. "I ended all financial support 3 months ago. He knows that. And no, I am no longer a sponsor for any part of Ethan's education." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. I understand, Dr. Hallstrom said at last, his tone gentler. I'm sorry to trouble you. It's okay. Thank you for calling, Rachel replied, and ended the call. She stood still. Not sad. Not shocked. Just cold. Not the kind of cold from early spring weather. But the kind that comes from a truth that hits deep in the bones. Ethan hadn't just seen her as a wallet. He had seen her as a permanent resource. A tool. A silent support system that never pushed back. Rachel sat down on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped tightly as if she needed to hold herself together. The room was quiet. Only the distant sound of traffic drifted in from the street below. She looked around the apartment, the wall art she bought from local art fairs, the wooden table she had assembled herself, the old but clean rug she picked up during her first ever post-job sale. Every item, every detail, had come from her sweat, her tears, her effort. No one had given them to her. No one had done it for her. No one had sacrificed for her. Only Rachel, for Ethan. Never the other way around. And so, after that call, she made a decision. No more silence. No more pretending. She would no longer let the family live in the illusion that Rachel was still carrying the weight. She would speak. She would tell the truth. And she would start with a dinner simple, no wine, no fresh flowers, just spaghetti, roasted vegetables, crusty bread. And the truth. Saturday. The air in Boston was crisp, despite it being late spring. Pale sunlight filtered through the third-floor apartment window, casting long streaks across the lightwood floor. Rachel Carter stood silently in the kitchen, peeling carrots with steady hands, though her mind wandered through a week's worth of unspoken questions. She had cleaned the apartment thoroughly. Not to impress her parents, had visited dozens of times and knew this place wasn't luxurious. But today was different. Today, Rachel didn't need polish or perfection. She needed quiet stillness through which the truth could echo clearly. Dinner was simple: spaghetti with tomato sauce, roasted vegetables, garlic toast, and a small apple pie, her mother's favorite. No flowers, no candles, no wine. Nothing to dress up what needed to be laid bare. At the center of the table sat a thick white envelope, neatly placed under the empty plate at her mother's seat. At exactly 6 p.m., came a knock at the door. Linda Carter stepped in first, clutching a floral-embroidered handkerchief, her cheeks pink from the cold. Something smells amazing, sweetheart. I think I'll have 2 servings, she said with a smile, her eyes filled with their usual warmth. David Carter followed behind, quiet as always, though his eyes seemed more tired than the last time Rachel had seen him. They exchanged polite hugs and short greetings. Rachel maintained just the right level of calm, as if this were any other ordinary weekend dinner. The meal passed with soft clinks of cutlery, compliments on the food, and small talk about the hometown. Rachel let them eat, let them laugh, let them feel at ease. Then, when the plates were down and the only sounds left were the hum of the ceiling fan and the ticking of the wall clock, Rachel stood. She reached for the empty plate, lifted it, and revealed the white envelope beneath. Without a word, she slid it across the table to her mother. Before I say anything, Rachel said, her voice steady, almost unnervingly so, I want you to read this. Linda looked at her daughter, slightly confused. She carefully pulled out the papers inside: account statements, tuition invoices, payment confirmations, bank receipts. Every document bore the name Rachel Carter. Clear notes scrawled across: tuition payment term 3 Ethan Carter. Harvard Med $17,990. Living stipend fall semester, and more. The further she flipped, the more her hands trembled. David stepped closer, glancing over her shoulder, his face darkening with each line item that appeared. I paid a total of $121,470 over the past 4 years, Rachel began, her voice just loud enough to slice the stillness. Not because Ethan begged. Not because you forced me. I did it willingly because I believed he deserved it. Because I thought that if someone in this family could sacrifice for a bigger dream, it should be me. Linda didn't lift her head. Her wrinkled hands clenched the papers tightly, as if loosening them would make the nightmare disappear. Rachel went on. I'm not saying this to be thanked. But Ethan told you I'm settling. That I should keep paying for the life he thinks he deserves: a penthouse, vacations, wine, and Louis Vuitton bags I've never even dared to look at. David sat down in silence, his face shadowed swallowing guilt and disbelief. And you've never once asked me if I was okay. No one knew what I gave up in this apartment to fund Ethan. No one asked, and I never said. Rachel drew a breath, then delivered the final blow. I stopped supporting Ethan 3 months ago. I cut him off. Blocked accounts. Stopped transfers. No more ties. But on Tuesday, the school called me. The dean of clinical practice. Ethan told them I was still his financial sponsor. Linda covered her mouth, gasping. She turned away but couldn't hide the tear that slipped down her cheek. David, still seated, whispered. Ethan, he really said that? I heard it with my own ears, Rachel said. No rumors. No second-hand stories. He told you right there, in that house. The room fell into a heavy silence, not one of awkwardness, but of a storm forming in each of their hearts. Linda finally looked up, her eyes red and wet. My girl, I'm so sorry. Her voice trembled. We believed the wrong person. We put the weight on the wrong shoulders. Rachel didn't cry. She simply nodded. Just a small nod. But for the first time, she no longer felt like a shadow in her own story. 3 days after that dinner, Ethan showed up at Rachel's door. No warning. No text. No call. Just the unexpected ring of the doorbell at nearly 8 p.m., as she was steeping tea and about to finish the last chapter of an old novel. Rachel answered the door wearing a light sweater, and when she saw who was standing there, her hand paused on the knob. Ethan wore a long coat, his hair unkempt as if it hadn't been washed in days, his eyes carrying something between confusion and arrogance. Rachel, he sighed. No greeting, no smile. We need to talk. Rachel looked at her brother for a long moment. No, she said, and started to close the door. Ethan raised a hand to stop it. Please. Just 5 minutes. She hesitated, then opened the door again. But she didn't invite him in. Ethan understood and stayed on the porch. I know, he began. Mom and Dad called. They're angry. Disappointed. I've been cut off from everyone. Cut off? Rachel repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you think the family is some kind of charity fund? Ethan fell silent. Not out of offense, but because he had no excuse left. I didn't mean to lie to you, he said, eyes darting away. I just thought you'd understand. I'm going through a tough time. You've been going through a tough time for 4 years on my credit card, Rachel replied. And when you finally had that degree in your hand, the first thing you did was belittle the person who got you there. Ethan bit his lip. You helped me, yes. But that was your choice. I never forced you. Rachel gave a bitter smile. True. But you exploited it. You treated that sacrifice as an obligation, not a gift. You lived as if you had a right to what you never earned. She paused, looking directly into the eyes that used to make her soften every time Ethan cried as a child. Now, they reflected a man she no longer recognized. You said I was ordinary, Rachel said, her voice low and steady. Do you know what I gave up in the past 8 years? A family. A home. A future not suspended over a checking account and bills with your name on them. Ethan didn't respond. His face hardened, but something in his expression shifted, like it was the first time he truly saw the consequences. Rachel drew a deep breath. I don't hate you, Ethan, she said. I just no longer see you as part of the life I'm trying to rebuild. You made your choices. And now I've made mine. She stepped back inside. I wish you luck, she said, and gently closed the door. Ethan didn't knock again. He stood there for a few seconds, then walked away. No apology. No promise to change. Just an ending. Rachel returned to the kitchen. The kettle had just finished boiling. She poured the tea and dropped in a slice of lemon. The scent drifted upward light and calming, like a melody just beginning. On the table, the book still lay open. But this time, she closed it. It was time to write her own story. Silence is a luxury. Not because it's rare, but because not everyone dares to face it. Rachel Carter used to fear silence. To her, it once meant lonely dinners with no one asking how her day went, long nights lying awake wondering how to scrape together her brother's tuition, the weight of shouldering everything alone in a noisy city that, at times, felt as cold as a vacuum. But now, silence was no longer the enemy. It was proof that she had let go. Let go of Ethan. Let go of the pretense. Let go of the burden of playing a role she never signed up for but had performed far too long, the role of the willing, selfless, tireless big sister. After their confrontation, Rachel didn't cry. She didn't call anyone to vent. She didn't post a long status on social media, didn't seek sympathy, didn't need defending. She just moved on. And in moving on, pieces of herself slowly began returning. She started by cleaning. Not her apartment herself. Rachel went through old emails and deleted hundreds of financial transaction receipts she had once sent to Ethan. She canceled the monthly reminders to transfer on the 3rd. She removed photos of her brother from their frames and replaced them with vintage art prints she had always loved but never bought, telling herself they were too indulgent. She cleaned out her wardrobe, keeping only the clothes that made her feel light, comfortable. No more holding on to worn-out sweaters out of guilt. No more eating instant noodles twice a week just to be safe. She began buying fresh bread instead of frozen. Replaced the wilted cactus with a pot of soft, fragrant lavender. And for the first time in years, she turned off her phone on the weekends, brewed a pot of good tea, and read not to escape, but because she wanted to. A few weeks later, Rachel returned to her old university where she'd graduated with honors in accounting, where she had once considered further study but gave up. In the admissions office, the advisor reviewed her file, then looked up with a smile. With your record, you could apply for a master's in public finance or nonprofit management. Depends on what you really want to pursue. Rachel paused for a few seconds before answering. Not because she didn't know. But because, for the first time, the question "what do you want?" wasn't drowned out by "what does someone else need?" She chose nonprofit management. Because she knew what it meant to carry weight. And if one day she wanted to help someone, it would be her choice, not a duty imposed on her. One May evening, Rachel was invited to a school networking event. She hadn't planned on going. But then she thought, why not? At the event, amid polite handshakes and the clinking of wine glasses, she met Marcus, a gentle man with kind eyes and a smile that didn't try too hard. They talked about books, about the things they had missed in their youth because of family obligations, and laughed about their mutual fondness for a rare cinnamon rose tea. Marcus didn't ask, "So aren't you planning on having a family?" He only asked, "Are you living for yourself yet?" That night, Rachel came home and pulled out a new notebook from her desk drawer. Brown leather cover. Thick. No decoration. No title line. She wrote. Day 1 of a new chapter. Not the sister. Not the sponsor. Not the rescuer. Just Rachel learning to live with silence and her own choices. And for the first time in her life, that is enough. Summer in Boston is unlike anywhere else. It arrives slowly, almost apologetically, as if still guilty for how long winter had lingered. The sun doesn't blaze, it glows gently, like the gaze of someone who knows better than to ask questions that don't need answering. Rachel Carter stood on the balcony of her new apartment, small but full of light, holding a cup of hot coffee, her eyes drifting toward the little park across the street. Children flew kites. A chubby dog chased a leaf. The breeze lifted her hair, no longer tied back just to keep things efficient. She took a deep breath. And she smiled. Not for any particular reason. Just because the feeling of living, truly living, had returned. The acceptance letter arrived on a Thursday morning. She opened it with steady hands. No nervousness. No expectations. No need for external validation. Just a choice. Her own. Congratulations, you've been accepted into the Masters in Nonprofit Management program, the letter read. We believe you will contribute not only through your knowledge, but through the story you bring with you. Rachel finished reading, folded the letter, and placed it on the shelf. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She simply poured another cup of coffee and got back to work. Because now, success wasn't a moment for others to witness. It was a journey she built day by day, no applause needed, no longer a backdrop for someone else's spotlight. Marcus still texted often. They hadn't given their relationship a name. No labels. No promises. But in the way he asked, "Did you sleep well?" or "It's a beautiful day, did you get a chance to walk outside?" There was something gentle in that, something warmer than any bouquet of flowers. Rachel wasn't planning ahead. She didn't need to. Love, if it came, would be a gift, not salvation. One evening in mid-July, while writing her first paper for class, Rachel suddenly thought of Ethan. Not with pain, but like remembering an old scar. She didn't know where he was, what he was doing, or if he was getting by. But she no longer felt the need to save him. True freedom doesn't come from letting go of someone else. It comes when you realize you don't need anyone's permission to be yourself. Rachel closed her laptop. She stepped out onto the balcony. The Boston sky was scattered with stars, light she once thought she'd never have time to really see. Now, she looked up. Without flinching. And whispered just for herself. I'm back. And this time, it's for me.